There's a lot of supplements out there that are very popular for depression, and you really hear a lot about, oh, this really helps somebody, but this really didn't help the other person at all. So in this video, I kind of want to walk through some of these popular supplements and help you understand the reason that they may be beneficial for depression and who they might actually help, and the person that they might not have any benefit for at all. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
Now, when we're talking about depression, it's important to remember that I'm not a doctor, and I don't want anything you learn here in this video to replace seeking medical help if you need medical help. Especially when we're talking about depression, I really like to see people seek help and try to find some help, but then while they're getting that help, do some research to figure out what might help you speed up this process. What might help you feel a little bit better, a little bit faster. And that's what we want to do in this video. And if you haven't seen our video on the nutrition side of depression, you really want to hit the pause button here and then go over and watch that video now. We'll have the link in the description below this video, because in that video we really go over some underlying causes for depression. So in this video, I'm going to kind of walk through these popular supplements and help you understand which of these underlying causes they may benefit. But if you don't understand how these underlying causes can create depression, then you're going to have a hard time figuring out which one of these supplements is going to be more beneficial for you. So if you haven't seen that video, pause this now and go watch that so you understand what I'm talking about when I'm referencing some of these underlying causes. Go ahead, watch it now. We'll wait. Have they watched it yet? Okay, great. So just remember, in our other video, we talked about the underlying causes of depression. A lot of times being hypotension or really low blood pressure and not just having enough minerals for the signals to travel from the body to the brain and the brain back to the body. We talked about people dealing with hypoglycemic type responses, where maybe a high urine pH or leaning too far on this anabolic side can really create sugar crashes and kind of make insulin a little bit over effective. Remember, we talked about that if somebody's leaning too far on this nighttime anabolic state, that their insulin can be a little bit over effective. So when we're looking at some of these supplements, some of them may make sense if they're pushing a person out of this state and allowing them to be in a more balanced situation. So we also talked about digestive symptoms and digestive malfunctions that can restrict the ability to access minerals from the food that we're eating and other nutrients that the body needs. So we'll reference some of those. And then we talked about some serotonin and dopamine issues. So let's just go through some of these supplements, and it'll kind of help us understand why some of these are so popular, but also why they don't help some people. So the first one we want to touch on is magnesium. And the most important thing about magnesium is it's one of the most pro-catabolic minerals. So if someone is leaning and they're just kind of stuck in that anabolic state most of the time, that state that we should really only be in at night, then this using some magnesium can help pull them out of that state. So when we're looking at magnesium, it can help fix this issue of being in this overly anabolic state where we usually see this high urine pH and insulin that might be kind of a bully. Maybe you're processing carbohydrates too effectively, and when you're hitting those sugar crashes, your body and your brain really doesn't have the fuel that it needs to function correctly. But the other interesting thing about magnesium is that it's a mineral, and when you're supplementing with minerals, you're supplying the body with minerals. Maybe minerals that it doesn't have the ability to access from the food that you're eating. First of all, because a lot of the food supply today just doesn't contain the magnesium that it used to have. So it kind of results in a lot of people maybe needing a little bit more magnesium. But also, if a person can't really get all the minerals out of their food, then we can just help give the body a little bit of minerals. So this particular thing is popular because it has the ability to really improve two of these major, very common underlying causes. Now, vitamin D is probably one of the more popular supplements, and there's really a lot of data about showing how vitamin D can really be beneficial for depression, and we'll put some links to some studies and things in the description below. But what's interesting about vitamin D is that we need proper bile flow to be able to access our fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D. So if someone is dealing with these digestive symptoms and maybe they're not really digesting their food correctly, and maybe the bile has become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, because when we're eating food, once it's acidified here in the stomach and it leaves the stomach, then this gallbladder is supposed to squirt this alkaline bile down here into the duodenum that really helps us digest and bust that food apart. But that bile is what helps us emulsify our dietary fats so that we can also access fat-soluble vitamins. So that can be a really big deal. And that can be why a lot of people aren't really getting the vitamin D that they need, is because they just can't process fats correctly. So we need to make sure that bile is flowing correctly. And if you think that could be a problem for you, we'll have a link in the description below for our video on 5 ways to improve bile flow so that you might be able to just access vitamin D a little bit better. But what's important about vitamin D is that it can raise blood pressure. Vitamin D helps us pull calcium out of the intestinal tract into the bloodstream, and that can be very important because that calcium can thicken up the blood and raise our blood pressure. So we see that vitamin D can really improve this low mineral, low blood pressure problem. So that could be a big reason why vitamin D is so popular with depression. It's just helping to raise that blood pressure. The problem is when someone takes too much vitamin D, it can also raise this urine pH right here. So that's something that we don't want to happen if someone's urine pH is already over 6.1 or 6.2 or so. If they start taking a whole bunch of vitamin D, that can raise this urine pH, and then that can magnify how aggressively insulin is processing glucose and creating more sugar crashes. So as beneficial as this can be for this here, taking too much vitamin D can be problematic for this hypoglycemic people, for those people who are having those sugar crashes. So what's great is that a person can just monitor their physiology a little bit and get an idea of the vitamin D dose that might be appropriate for them. And if you don't know how to look at your own body chemistry, my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, kind of walks you through simple tests that you can do at home with tools you can pick up at a pharmacy or a health food store, and you can just keep an eye on where your blood pressure is and what your urine pH is telling you. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll have a link in the description below where you can get the whole thing totally for free, and that'll kind of walk you through how to look at your own body chemistry. So that can be important. Another thing to know about vitamin D is that there's a lot of studies that just kind of indicate that, hey, just supplementing with vitamin D is not quite as good as all the other benefits that come from some good sun exposure. So if you can find some reasonable levels of sun exposure, it might be even more beneficial than the supplementing with the vitamin D. There's also some people that feel like this vitamin D is important for this production here with serotonin, dopamine, all those things that are beneficial when it comes to depression. So let's go to St. John's wort, and this seems to be a little more popular in other countries beyond the US. A lot of other countries use this a lot. And one thing that seems to be clear is that St. John's wort has the ability to raise blood pressure, because there's a lot of warnings like, oh, you shouldn't use this if your blood pressure is high. And if it's going to raise blood pressure, yeah, that makes sense. So that may help us understand why St. John's wort could be beneficial for some folks if their blood pressure is too low, and it's going to help them raise that blood pressure. But if someone's having depression for other reasons and their blood pressure is not too low, that's not going to do a whole lot for them. Now, zinc, people feel like this is really important over here, that's an important factor when it comes to serotonin, dopamine, and all these neurotransmitter functions. But another crucial thing with zinc is that it's not only a mineral that could help lift the minerals in the system, but also zinc is needed to make stomach acid. So if someone can't break down their food because of a hypochlorhydria issue where their body is not making enough stomach acid, it might not be making enough stomach acid because of a lack of zinc. Zinc is needed for the body to make hydrochloric acid so we can properly acidify our food and get all the nutrients out of that food. So if a person is just missing zinc and they start supplementing with some zinc, then it can really boost the ability to get more minerals out of your food and correct a lot of these other possible problems when it comes to depression. And B12 is also a very common problem that people see with depression, and they find these low B12 issues, and you kind of think, oh, you kind of see low B12 when somebody's a vegan, or if they don't have the ability to properly break down the meats that they're consuming. If you're consuming animal protein, but you don't have the ability to digest it correctly, you're not really getting the nutrients out of that protein, and you're not getting the benefits. So you might as well be a vegan if you're not really accessing the nutrients in the food that you're eating. So another thing I like to say about B12 is that there are some cofactors in there that you can get from animal proteins that you can't get from a B12 shot or from a supplement. So a lot of people will do better if they are having the ability to consume animal proteins. If you're vegan because of religious or spiritual beliefs and all that kind of stuff, I don't want you to change just because of that. You're going to stress yourself out. But if a person is eating a vegan diet because they think that's the healthiest thing, then we'll have a link in the description below for our video on problems that can come from a vegan diet. Now, omega-3s are very popular with depression, and a lot of people want to talk about how the fats are beneficial for the brain, and the brain needs these fats to function and repair and rebuild and all these things. But I sort of view it a little bit differently. Omega-3s are very pro-catabolic. So when we're looking at omega-3s, they have the ability to improve an anabolic imbalance, and especially if someone has insulin that's overly powerful. Because omega-3s are not as beneficial as most people think, because they actually they view them as anti-inflammatory, but they also have the ability to make a person more insulin resistant. So if someone's insulin resistant, like, oh, I got to get rid of some of this inflammation, I'm going to take a whole bunch of omega-3s, they can just be magnifying that insulin resistance problem and creating more inflammation in the long run by needing more and more insulin to process those sugars. But if someone is up here and they're in this overly anabolic state, maybe their urine pH is high and they're creating sugar crashes from overly processing carbohydrates, then these omega-3s can really help that situation and make that insulin not such a bully. And so since these are pro-catabolic, things like omega-3 and magnesium that are pro-catabolic, you want to take those earlier in the day when the body is supposed to be catabolic. B12, also pro-catabolic. So B12 can be beneficial if someone's in this overly anabolic state. So taking these types of things in the morning or with lunch, earlier in the day, seem to be more beneficial. Now, I'm not going to give you dosages on any of these things here. I'm not really allowed to do that. You're going to have to do your research to figure out what's going to be appropriate for you. Now, the next thing is L-phenylalanine, which is very successful when it comes to depression, from what it seems. And the reason that is because this particular amino acid, and this amino acid can kind of be the precursor to tyrosine. The body can make tyrosine using L-phenylalanine. So some people will just supplement with tyrosine and they might see similar improvements, but all the research seems to point to L-phenylalanine being a little bit more appropriate, a little more effective. But the reason this can be so effective is because A, it's pro-catabolic, so it can help improve this anabolic imbalance. It can help lift blood pressure and improve a hypotension problem where someone's blood pressure is too low. And a lot of these studies can say that it also seems to improve this situation here, where it's helping with dopamine production. So this can really be a triple hitter, and that might be why it's so popular and so many people seem to see great improvement using it. And the last one is probiotics. And in our other video on the nutrition side of depression, you learned that we really need the proper gut flora to be able to produce this serotonin stuff that can be so important with depression. So that helps us understand why probiotics can really help this situation, getting a good gut flora there so that we can actually make this serotonin stuff. And the other good thing about probiotics is that our probiotics in the gut help us digest our food a little bit better and get more nutrients out of that food. So if someone's dealing with a hypochlorhydria issue where they can't make enough stomach acid because maybe they don't have enough nutrients to do that, then using some probiotics could really benefit that situation too, if you can help the body get more nutrients and resources that it needs to kind of improve its digestive function. But this should help you understand that I am really not artistic. But beyond that, you should see that there is no clear-cut, oh, this should work for depression. It's really not about finding a remedy for the problem that you're dealing with. It's about understanding which of these issues may be creating the problem for you and then taking the right steps to address that specific issue. So you really should not find your answer in this video. You should find the realization that I have some homework to do. I need to figure out what's going on with my body chemistry and why I'm dealing with this problem. If I can figure out what's creating this problem, then I just have to take the steps to create improvement to that underlying cause. That's how you really see results. So you have homework to do. In the links below in the description, you'll find more information to dig deeper into which aspects you feel like you need to dig deeper in. But if you skip that other video because you're like, let's just see what the whippersnapper has to say about these supplements, then you see now you really want to understand these things a little bit better. So if you haven't seen it already, jump over right now and check out that video on the nutrition side for depression so that you can understand these underlying causes a little bit better. It's that understanding that's going to help you see the real results. Let us know how it goes.